Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to Star Wars Real Talk. Today we're going to be talking about the duality of Obi-Wan and Anakin, because that is my favorite part of the Star Wars series. I've always tried to think, who do I like better, Anakin or Obi-Wan? Well, growing up, I always liked Obi-Wan better. I loved how he was so cool and calm and collected, and he always knew best. And when I was younger, I had a hard time relating to Anakin because I just thought that he was so, you could see that he was too outgoing and overconfident. And when Obi-Wan was talking to him, you always knew that Obi-Wan was kind of telling the truth. Like, Anakin should listen to Obi-Wan more. But as I get older and I start to see, develop my own opinions with, how do you say it, the system or whatever rules are in place already, you start to think about how, you would do things differently, or how you might pursue problems in a different way than people expect you to, like your peers, your parents, whoever. So as I grow older, I start to relate to the younger of the two in kind of an odd way, where you start to see where Anakin had his judgments with the with his system and the Jedi Council. So growing up and seeing the movies in a more straightforward way as a child, Obi-Wan was always my favorite. But as I get older and I start to really appreciate the complexity of Anakin and how his story carries on throughout the first six movies, I start to appreciate him more as a character and the development that he goes through. I just found him far more interesting. So being a fan of both Obi-Wan and Anakin, I started to notice there are similarities and differences between them, and it kind of creates a yin and yang between their personalities. So let's start with Obi-Wan Kenobi. As far as his traits and personality goes, he's calm, thoughtful, slow to speak. I want to say laid back, but that doesn't seem the right word. More contemplative or meditative. Like he's always listening and thinking about what someone is saying and considering it before he decides to open his mouth and respond. Every action and every word he says is very controlled. He thinks everything through. He comes across very wise. He's loyal to the Jedi Order, loyal to his comrades. Obi-Wan is a long-term thinker. He doesn't think about how his actions might suit him best in the moment. He thinks about how they're going to play out over the next few weeks or months or even years. He knows that to act quickly and swiftly without putting much thought into it can lead to consequences. And Obi-Wan's a little bit cryptic. When he's giving advice and using his wisdom to help somebody else, he doesn't usually just flat out tell someone what they have to do. He tries to give them advice in a way where they can figure it out for themselves so that they can grow and learn best from their own experiences and not just be told what to do. So I would very much consider Obi-Wan on the yin side of the yin-yang symbol. I would say some cons to Obi-Wan's personality is that he can be a little bit stubborn. He's not really super open-minded to alternatives or anything that goes against what the Jedi Code is or the Jedi Council. He wants to stick to his guns, and that can make him, it can be a bit of a weakness because he can sometimes cloud his own judgment because of his own stubbornness. Moving over to Anakin, he kind of comes across as the opposite of Obi-Wan, which is what I find so interesting as they're paired up as master and Padawan. So Anakin is confident, and I think Anakin comes across as charismatic. When he says something, he says it with a smirk on his face. He knows how to read people. He knows how to talk to people in a way where he can connect with them. And I would say Anakin's pretty open-minded. Like, he's not progressive open-minded. It's just he's open to trying things new ways, trying new strategies, trying to do things his own way, or not shying away from new technology or a new way to engage the enemy. Whereas Obi-Wan is a little more, he sticks to the books. He sticks to the ways that he knows works or whatever is recommended to him by the council. Anakin sees battles as fun, or he sees them as challenges. Sometimes when he should be taking battles seriously, he's too focused on how many droids he's killed. He's a man of action. He doesn't like to sit around and wait or think or decide what he's going to do next. He likes to act. He's pretty emotional, and he likes to act on those emotions. He's very true to his heart, and in that way, he's a pretty straightforward person. There are cons that come with this kind of personality. He can come across as cocky, overconfident, overreacts to situations where if he had just thought it out, he probably would have been okay, but he just flies into action And if you watch the Clone Wars animated series, they do show a lot of his growth and his wisdom, where he doesn't just fly into battle like he does in Episode 2, but still, it's in him. It's what he wants to do. He has to consciously decide not to. I would put Anakin on the yang side of the yin-yang symbol. So if we look at this chart here, I found this interesting. There are some words here. Just words that describe someone who might be more yin and someone who might be more yang. So I would put Obi-Wan on the inside. So some words that stand out to me are cold, light, negative, passive, stubborn. And on the opposite yang side for Anakin, we have hot, dark, dominant, positive, progressive. Now, some of these words, you look at them by themselves and you think, oh, those are kind of contrasting from how they actually seem. Like on the inside for Obi-Wan, we have the word hate, and on the Yang side, we have the word love. But I do think that relates to their personalities. Anakin was very emotional, and he didn't deny himself from loving Padme. And the word mercy is on here too. And he does seem someone who is emotional and listens to their heart and listens to love is the kind of person that can show mercy. Whereas Obi-Wan has the word hate on his side, which I find interesting because I don't find him a hateful person. But if there was a situation where they had to make a tough call, Anakin might be more likely to show mercy than Obi-Wan. So the word hate, I wouldn't say he's hateful, but it does kind of show the contrast between them. Where Obi-Wan stays true to the light side from the start to the finish, Anakin turns to the dark side, which does line up with the Yang personality type. Anakin has the words sun on his side, whereas Obi-Wan has the word moon. I find that interesting just because, I don't know, it just kind of, it ties me into Mustafar, the burning lava planet, and how that was Anakin's own undoing, which also lines up with the word hot, where the opposite, Obi-Wan has the word moon on his side, and he doesn't ever end up on a moon unless you consider the Death Star a moon. But if you think about what it would be like to be on the moon, it's cold, it's alone. It would be very alienating to be on a moon by yourself. And that kind of represents how Obi-Wan ended up on Tatooine, and he put himself in this alienation to, in a way, punish himself for failing, but also to keep an eye on Luke. And that would be a very lonely life without much interaction. Very dull, the opposite of Yang. On Obi-Wan's side, it shows the word negative. And I do think that that's kind of true, because there are a lot of situations where when Obi-Wan's in a bind, he's letting out a sarcastic comment describing how could we have ended up in this situation. And Anakin is usually the one to respond with a more positive angle about how we can do this, Master. These guys are nothing. Something like that. So, whereas Anakin is on the Yang side and he ends up turning to the dark side, he'd still be considered the more positive person in this equation, because Obi-Wan he's usually he's pissed off that he ended up in some kind of situation, whereas Anakin sees it as a challenge that they can overcome together. Kind of interesting. But where there are differences, there are always similarities. Some things I found in common is that they're both sarcastic. They both get into this banter with each other where they're just ripping on each other with sarcasm, whatever. Usually, like, it could be in a quiet, awkward elevator ride, or it could be in the middle of heated combat. They always find some way to kind of get under each other's skin. Mostly Anakin getting under Obi-Wan's skin, but nonetheless, they always have this sarcastic banter back and forth, which is interesting. It makes them a good match for each other, even when they have so many opposite personalities. I'd say they're both competitive. They've ended up in situations, if you've watched the Clone Wars, where they're competing to see who's more efficient in battle. Another word that I wasn't sure how to describe, so I wrote momentum, because it seems like they feed off each other's energy a lot. And while Obi-Wan seems to be the voice of reason to calm Anakin down in certain situations, there are other situations where they kind of feed off each other. Like if they're going to be sarcastic, or they're going to be making jokes off each other, or they're going to be looking to each other for motivation in a battle. They do feed off each other's energy, and it gives them momentum in whatever they're doing. I would also say that they're both wise from their experiences, because they both had very different experiences based on the way that they choose to handle these experiences. And we see in the Clone Wars that Anakin does grow to be quite wise between episode 2 and episode 3. And when he's training his Padawan Ahsoka, he does come across as wise and he gives good advice, but we know that he came across his advice very differently from most Jedi, but nonetheless, it usually ends up being good advice. I would say that they're both stubborn, while Obi-Wan is stubborn to the Jedi Council and what he considers the traditional Jedi ways and maybe the way he learned things. Anakin is stubborn in the way that he believes too strongly in himself and his own abilities. So I would consider them both stubborn in different ways. And lastly, I have that they both learn from each other. Like I mentioned earlier with Anakin getting his own wisdom over time, he pursues things in a different way. He sees things in a different way. And so does Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan does mention a lot in the Clone Wars and in the movies that he learns a lot from Anakin. And he calls Anakin a better Jedi on a few different occasions. And obviously Anakin learned a lot about being patient and stuff from Obi-Wan, and you see the way that they have learned to be better Jedi and better warriors in different situations. So I just found that interesting, that there's one is the master and one is the Padawan, and they're both totally different personalities. They both have learned a lot from each other, and I just found that interesting. Okay, that's gonna do it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. This is my first actual Star Wars video on this channel, so let me know what you think about it and any kind of content you'd like to see. I'm just realizing now that this is usually where Star Wars YouTubers have some catchy outro. I don't have any clever line written down. I haven't thought of one yet. So for today, I'm just gonna say, see ya. I'll have something better next time, I promise.